Aloha mai kākou. Welcome. Aloha. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are here with us at the UH Mānoa Campus Center Ballroom or tuning in online. Thank you so much for being here as we continue a very important and timely conversation around federal policy changes and its impact to higher education. I'm Moanike Alanabaro, spokeswoman here at UH Mānoa, and today's forum is led by University of Hawaiʻi President Wendy Hensel and members of her leadership team who will be joining us on stage in just a bit. We'll be diving into what these policy changes mean for each and every one of our 10 campuses. Before we proceed, we'd like to take a moment to recognize U.S. House Representative Jill Tokuda joining us in the audience. Aloha, Congresswoman. Mahalo for your support. And of course, we are very honored to share this space with you all. To ensure accessibility for all, please help us also recognize Mala Arkin and Sabina Wilford, our American Sign Language interpreters, with us today as well. Mahalo. Velina mai kākou I ke kipa ana mai I ke kulanui o Hawaiʻi Mānoa, ka home o ka ua tuahine. Wherever you may joining us from, we welcome you warmly to UH Mānoa, where we are blessed to be nourished by the misty tuahine rains. This conversation, of course, extends far beyond Mānoa. We welcome in our students, our haumana, our faculty, staff across the UH-10 campus system, and community members as well who have taken the time to join us. The very first UH Forum on Federal Policy Changes was held on March 14th. This is the second and was actually proposed by the President's EO Advisory Committee, really in an effort to be responsive to concerns and to keep our UH-10 campus community informed. To start us off with opening remarks and a brief presentation, we'd like to welcome to the stage University of Hawaiʻi President Wendy Hensel.
In a time of high stress, I wish we all had a voice as melodious as hers. It's very soothing in times of high anxiety. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for showing up tonight. I know how busy it is right now with finals approaching. I'm not surprised. Students are probably mostly watching online. But we did think it was important just to continue to communicate, given the unprecedented speed of change and policy changes that are coming down from the federal government, to ensure you know what's happening. It's hard to make sense of the different pieces that are in play, and that you are informed about what we're doing so that you can give us feedback in real time about how you feel about it. So I start today with something that I showed several times in my last presentation, because our core values and our mission are grounding all of the work that we're doing. And so I won't go through these, but I think they're critically important to remind us here at the beginning. They are certainly something that my leadership team talks about every single day, and I know that these are concerns and values that are shared by so many in our community. So I'm going to start with the thing that's been top of mind in terms of the press lately, and I think in terms of people's concerns, and that is the news that we have had members of our community affected by visa revocations. There's been a lot of talk across the country about this, and it has affected some of us here. Less than 5 students have been affected, and I should say of the 5, 2 were no longer current students. So it's really a fairly small population here on campus. Nevertheless, of significant concern for those individuals and certainly for those of us who care about them. And I want to also be clear here up front. I know there's been a lot of conversation about how these have been motivated by students who have been identified as engaging in protest activities. So far, that has not been the case with the ones that we've identified. There has not been a clear indication of why, and because of the small number, we won't get into specific reasons to protect the privacy of those who are engaged. But to the best of our knowledge, no one has been targeted for protest activities or free speech related engagement. So I think that's an important thing to say. So how do we find out? We are monitoring what is called the International Student, the SEVIS, Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. That's where we find out if somebody's visa has been terminated. And in fact, in these cases, we found out before the student was notified. And so when we find out, we reach out to the student and we begin a dialogue immediately about how we can support them as individuals. That support has involved identifying pro bono legal services that can assist in working through the specific challenges that particular student or individual faces, and identifying services that can be provided. We do not take folks who have lost their visa off our enrollment agendas or our rosters. That's not something that we've done. And we will work with each of these students to finish out or identify how we can support their academic studies during the pendency of the legal challenges that occur from that point. So at this point, there have not been significant impacts or large scale on a widespread basis, but there have been a few, and we are continuing to support those students in a way that's appropriate to their individual situation. We are also closely monitoring the dialogue and the policy advocacy that's taken on a broader level. And I'll talk in a little bit about our collective action with other agencies of higher education. But we have been particularly involved with the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration. And they have filed amicus briefs and have issued action statements that support students in these spaces and call for an end to this type of activity by the federal government. So I did want to show this. People often ask what services are available to international students. These services that you see up here on the slide are always available to our international students, and they have been actively working with affected students. So just wanted to reinforce for our community that there are many different services that are available both at Mānoa, at the four-year campuses, and at the community colleges to support students during these times. I know there's also a great deal of angst about enforcement by ICE, particularly as it relates to undocumented students, but also to these visa revocations. And I'm happy to report that we are not aware of any ICE activity on campus at any point since the federal administration began in January. So that has not changed. And we have put forward specific information about who to speak with, what are the phone numbers, what are the things to do if, in fact, there is an entry of ICE onto campus to ensure that we both follow the law, but also ensure that rights are protected to the maximum extent that they can be. And all of those are online, and we will continue to put those out. But I wanted to provide a specific QR code here in the slide so that if you're interested in looking at what's out there, you can be taken to that directly. We're happy to answer more specific questions as we get to our Q&A section here. So in terms of what's changed, those of you who attended the last session or watched it on YouTube or live streamed, fast and furious is how to describe changes that have happened since then. So I'll just very briefly give you an update, not going back to the beginning, but letting you know what's changed since the last time we had these conversations. I believe the day that we spoke was right around when the U.S. Department of Education announced that they were reducing their staffing by 50% and then moving to closure of the department. We also have since seen the Department of Energy join with the NIH in saying that indirect cost recovery now will be a flat 15%. If you remember, those are all of the different pieces that go into supporting the research endeavor at a university, including staff, equipment, electricity to the lab, all of those things are indirect costs. And typically our rates, at least it relates to biomedical research, is somewhere around 55 to 65%. So a categorical restriction down to 15% is fairly catastrophic. And there has been an injunction entered in the NIH case, and we'll see what happens with the Department of Energy. One thing that's interesting is the federal government said you can either accept 15% or we will simply terminate all of your grants with the federal government. So some interesting new techniques and strategies that are coming out of the federal government to secure compliance. We also have seen an escalation of the number of grants and the types of grants that have been subject to termination or halt. And we listed here some of those that have been most affected, including NOAA, the Department of Commerce, USAID, as you know. The NSF has recently significantly escalated the number of its terminations, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the NIH, DHHS, and the Department of Energy. So very widespread activity that we are beginning to see in terms of real impacts on our actions. At the same time, with the fiscal FY26 budget going forward in Congress, what's happened, we can talk about the specifics, it's rather complex, but understand that the continuation of the existing budget didn't mean continuation of existing funding levels. It gives tremendous discretion to the agencies over Congress in terms of how those funds are spent. And you can see here in the list in the third column some of the agencies that have identified for us who intend to do significant restructuring of forward-looking funding. So a lot of our conversation is about backward-looking. What is terminated? What is ending? What is changing? Much of frankly, more significant concern or emerging concern is what funding will never be bestowed and is being eliminated going forward. Very significant impacts. And then finally, in the category of DEIA, I wanted to, last time I was here, reported to you that there was an injunction that had been put on the certification requirement that in order to receive federal funds, universities articulate that they are DEIA-free in a certification. That had been on hold through a temporary restraining order, and that has been lifted, meaning that certifications now can go forward. And so that is a setback in terms of the litigation strategy that had been pursued. So how does it affect us specifically? Those of you who've been paying close attention know that I reported on this at the Board of Regents meeting on Thursday. You will note that there are higher numbers here today that I'm reporting just a few days later, which gives you some sense of the traffic that we're receiving. But we were recently identified in the Chronicle of Higher Education as the 52nd most impacted or most likely to be impacted university in the country as a result of these federal funding changes. As of, I won't even say a few minutes ago, because in the time it took me to walk over here, I received another email with a major termination for one of our programs. But as of this morning, there were 48 research programs that had been terminated, paused, or phased out, totaling $36 million in awards. That equates to about $250,000 in payroll expenses each month as of right now. And currently, the number of employees is escalating pretty significantly to now 82 employees who have been affected by these changes. These are not surprising, given how the federal government has communicated its areas of priority and how it connects into areas of excellence at the University of Hawaii. And you can see here the areas that are particularly impacted are DEIA, as we just said, sustainability and renewable energy, climate change and food resilience, minority health disparities, and economic development activities in minority programs. So, as I mentioned last time, things we're incredibly proud of, things that we're incredibly good at, are particularly under challenge and attack at this particular moment. I wanted to throw this particular slide in there because there's some confusing, conflicting data that's out there that may cause you to ask, how bad is it really? And we start with a number that all of us should be incredibly proud of, especially those of you who are doing research and have been doing phenomenally in securing grants and contracts up to this change in the federal administration. As of now in FY25, we are on track to break every record we've ever had in terms of research awards. We're on track to exceed $700 million, which sounds phenomenal and is a phenomenal reflection of the excellence of our faculty and our activities. That's the fourth straight record-breaking year. So kudos to everyone involved in that. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean a lot in this context, and we can talk about that specifically here in a minute. But as I mentioned, those funding shifts in agencies that have awarded that money continue to evolve, and we continue to get new termination and stop work orders daily. So it is possible for both of these things to exist simultaneously, but I want to assure you that there are very significant financial impacts that are happening in real time and will continue to be highly problematic. Complicating the measure is it isn't just us, as we know, right? Certainly not just us as a university, but also not just us as a university within the larger federal funding environment and things happening in the economy. We absolutely expect significant rising costs as a result of the tariffs and some of the economic policies that are occurring. We expect to see rises in inflation and interest rates. There's some indication that that will happen. And that's at the same time that all of those federal personnel reductions have occurred. You know, if there's no one there to process an award or to administratively grant funding, then there is a significantly longer period of time that we don't receive funding that's already been expended. So there's a significant cash flow issue and a managerial issue at the same time that there are real losses in terms of those grants that I just spoke to. So all of that's happening simultaneously, and teasing out pieces of that is incredibly complicated and will continue to be challenging going forward. For that reason, last week, we implemented new financial conservation measures. And I think it's important to start with something that I'm really proud of and that you should be proud of too. At this moment, we are very much financially stable, and that's due to the excellent stewardship of the prior administration and careful considerations we continue to make going forward. And so we have reserve funds that can meet the challenge of this moment, including the severance pay that is owed to our faculty and staff who have been impacted by these employment changes in our collective bargaining agreements and in different contingency plans that we've activated. However, there is no guarantee. It's becoming increasingly complex as a cash flow measure and as a resources measure to manage this, and it's required some additional steps. As you know, those involve some additional steps for approval for all new hires that come through extramural funds. Those that are coming forward on state funds can proceed as expected. It was important to me, we've been listening to you, that we need to preserve flexibility to meet our strategic objectives at the same time that we're working to address these financial challenges. So trying to balance some centralized control with some on-the-ground frontline control at the same time. The same is true for travel. While we are saying that that only essential travel should go forward as it relates to any university funding or extramural funding. Extramural is a little different. But all of that means that there are exceptions that play into the definition of essential, including advancement toward promotion and tenure, including are you delivering science or a research presentation at a conference. You know, maybe if it's a significant professional development opportunity, we can send 1 or 2 people as opposed to 10 or 15. So you get the point. We're not trying to stop travel, but to put some additional controls to ask whether it should go forward. As for extramural funds, you may say, well, those already are funded outside of the university. But again, it's also about cash flow and about whether those expenditures will ever be reimbursed as these things get terminated or payment is delayed. So that's why that's necessary. So a few other pieces to these that are listed here, and we will continue to ask the question of what do we need to do that's thoughtful, that's measured, that neither overreacts or underreacts to this very challenging moment. And we're happy to take specific questions about that here in a minute. So I did want to briefly touch on Harvard because I know it's been in the news a lot and we've been talking about it. And many people have said to me, we really hope that you take Harvard's position and stand up and defend these conditions as they go forward. So I wanted to just give you a little information about what's happening at Harvard if you've looked at it but haven't looked terribly closely. The conditions that were given to Harvard last Friday were really pretty incredible. And in fact, the conversations that we've had internally have really speculated that it was intended to receive a no from Harvard, potentially, because they are so significant. They are the type of things that I can say confidently pretty much no university could agree to and still remain a university. So what are those kind of things? Audits and reform units. Or audit teams to go into different academic units to ensure ideological equivalency and to ensure no anti-Semitism and bias in the classroom. Changes in governance structure to limit student and faculty governance. Completely dismantling all DEI programs, roles, and related policies and certifying that you've done so. Enforcing not only rules of protest currently, but providing lists of students who have been disciplined in the past and enforcing discipline for those who had not received it, and then submitting ongoing quarterly compliance reports through at least 2028. So extraordinarily egregious, considerably more harsh than Columbia, at least in the initial salvo that went to Columbia, although now there's talk about whether there's additional pieces of this coming into play. So what I wanted to say to this community is we absolutely stand with Harvard in this, and we absolutely would not submit to these type of conditions. It is fundamental to academic freedom. It's fundamental to our core mission as a university. And as I'll show you here in a second, actually I'll just go on to the next page, we are working with our sister and brother institutions in higher education to stand firmly together as a collective voice to bring some collective authority, if you will, or moral persuasion to the situation. So let me tell you, I've told you some of this before, but let me tell you one more time. We are in 5 lawsuits with the Attorney General. Let me say that again, 5 lawsuits that UH is an instrumental partner, and frankly, that some of UH is the foundational point of these collective lawsuits. So to those of you who want to see us responding to this moment with action, that is consistently happening and continuing to happen as new things roll out, and we speak with the Attorney General, who, let me say, has been a tremendous partner as we've gone forward. So much appreciation for the governor and his team and how supportive they've been. But we are fighting on these fronts. Second, I have a list here of some of the places that we are taking collective action. The American Council on Education, or ACE, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, or APLU. I mentioned the President's Alliance on Higher Ed and Immigration, and the American Association of Colleges and Universities, which I will tell you in a little bit of an advanced preview, has a statement that will be coming out tomorrow, of which the University of Hawaii is a signatory. So we are increasingly, as the moment demands it, speaking out and taking action as let's say, the stakes evolve and as it becomes clear what is expected of higher education in this moment. So we will share that with our community, and you can expect that tomorrow. Also, just again to reassure you, on a daily basis, we are meeting to have these conversations, not just with you, but with governance, with the EO President's Advisory Team, who is the reason I'm here today. They felt like it was important to have another town hall. And as Congresswoman Takuta's presence shows here, we are in active conversations with our federal partners, with our state legislative partners, our philanthropic community as we look for alternative sources to maintain important services, and members of our business community and just nonprofits. All of us are in the same boat and working together to really respond to this moment. We also are escalating our public relations campaign. You're going to see more stories in the days ahead about the personal, tangible impact on individuals, on our medical programs, on our research platform. So we are trying to get the message out that this is not just an attack on the university. This is an attack on really a way of life that prioritizes science and truth and socioeconomic mobility and all of those wonderful things that we stand for. So I wanted to end with this slide with some additional words. I continue to hear from our community, stand firm, take action, fight back. And what I want to say is we are. We are. We're being thoughtful in how we are messaging at this moment. It is not wise to fight every single battle in every single place. It's not possible. So we're trying to come together as a community to fight the fights that matter, to speak with one voice with our colleagues, and to be as strong as we possibly can. So that what we say that these are the values and core mission that we stand for, let me say unequivocally, we will defend them, and we are defending them, and we will continue to defend them. So I'll leave this up for a moment as we bring everyone up here, but this is a QR code that will take you to the extremely extensive information delineated by topic on our federal resource page, and we encourage you to continue talking with us and let us know what you're worried about so that we can keep the dialogue going. So thank you.